I'm a fan of the Pokemon franchise and have been since Red and Blue first came out in the UK when I was 12 years old, but I'm going to try and make this review as objective as possible. At this point in my playthrough, I've completed Pokemon Violet's 3 main storylines, and I'm the most recent champion ranked trainer of the Paldea region. That's not to say I won't play the post-game, just that I haven't played it yet. I might do a separate review of that section of the game if people are interested in it. So this review will be focused on what should be the largest and arguably meatiest section of the game. Now there's a hell of a lot to talk about, both good and bad, so I'm going to go through it, scoring the sins and wins in the order I've experienced so you can get a good idea of how my impressions and views evolve over time. Okay, I'll see myself out.
But first,
Immediately, I'm struck by how generally bland and uninspired the art style is.
That's a sin.
The character models look and move stiffly like toy dolls in a lot of these intro scenes, and it was the same further along into the game as well.
That's a sin.
The character models show the most extreme version of facial expressions for each sentence spoken, and sometimes the emotion doesn't quite match what's being said.
That's a sin.
The main character's outfit and general appearance is generic and lame. It gives me vibes. I guess this was encouragement to try out new outfits at the very least, but still not the best foot forward, and I really only used a single alternate outfit I earned through the main quest instead of purchasing other outfit pieces.
That's a sin.
Nemona is the player's rival, and because of backstory reasons, has an unhealthy obsession over them, but she always comes across as super thirsty and a little insane. Please do not Google that, you have been warned.
That's a sin.
I finally get to see some Pokemon in the game world, and the models look like plastic and felt-covered toys. Not going to lie, I was hoping for more, and that theme carries forward into the rest of the game, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's a sin.
The starter Pokemon designs, and the vast majority of this generation's new Pokemon, are pretty goofy, but they're not bad, which is an infinite improvement over a living ice cream cone. It's still really early in the game, but the lack of voice acting is not only incredibly disappointing, but creates an ever-present layer of silence throughout the game, despite the constant background music, and it gives me concerns that the rest of the game will have less of an emotional impact because of it.
That's a sin.
The lazy cuts and lacking animations during cutscenes are signs of either development crunch with tight timelines or lack of capability in creating large, detailed open-world games for the Nintendo Switch. Breath of the Wild did it fantastically and on the console generation before the Switch, so it's definitely possible to do, but maybe Game Freak don't know how to create something of that caliber and level of detail.
That's a sin.
The Pokemon cries are still crap. Why?
That's a sin.
The UI is super clean and the use of it as a translucent area of the game world helps maintain immersion, but it generally looks cheap and has no character. Overall, the majority of the UI elements look more like something put together in Photoshop on someone's lunch break than something that took thought and effort to put together.
That's a sin.
Pokemon move animations vary in quality from abysmally lazy to barely adequate, and by this point in my playthrough I'm beginning to think that Game Freak might need to start taking longer dev periods between titles so they can develop a truly high quality product worthy of the player's time and wallet. I might even argue that releasing DLC expansions to mainline titles in between development cycles could make each title relevant for longer and give Game Freak the space to take those longer dev cycles they might need.
That's a sin.
Auto heal is excellent and is a feature that should have always existed, and this won't be the last time I say that sentence.
winning.
I love Let's Go mode, and the auto battle feature quickly becomes my new way to grind levels because picks up nearby items, gets me P, and allows me to explore the region without being stalled by random battles, one walking alongside me.
Winning.
It looks visually interesting now, and its design leans into it being a smartphone app.
Winning.
This was nice. Sneaking up on capture targets to get a free turn at the start of combat is a brilliant touch. I heard that was a thing in Legends Arceus, and I like how it gives me a strategic edge.
Winning.
Battles taking place in the overworld is as amazing as I hoped it would be, but it could be janky as hell. The jank gets so bad and is so prevalent that it makes the game feel like it's got pieces of it that were never quite finished before they released it.
That's a sin.
It's still fairly early in the playthrough, but so far, wild Pokemon in the overworld look like they belong in the environment, unlike how stiffly they were displayed in Sword and Shield. Which I really like, and groups of Pokemon feel almost natural.
Winning.
Pokemon naturally sitting in trees, swimming through water or flying is a great touch both for immersion and for new variations to the battle capture gameplay loops, and I really enjoyed that.
Winning.
The player being an active participant in dialogues is a nice touch, but it would be better if it was paired with more choices and better writing overall. Oh no. The Pokemon centers look like cheap petrol stations instead of medical and meeting facilities for trainers and other travelers. Why is this, and how do we stop it from being a thing? Look at them! They're just standing in t-shirts with no real cover from the weather. How could you do this to Nurse Joy? What did she ever do to you?
That's a sin.
Accessing Pokemon storage from anywhere is another feature that should have always existed, and I can't stress how much the ability to change my squad whenever I please has and will enhance my experience throughout my playthrough.
Winning.
Eating food cutscenes look like constipation with an expressionless face, and I'm honestly a bit creeped out. But more than that, it looks like a JPEG. I did not pay for JPEG level cutscenes in my Pokemon game, mate.
That's a sin.
I can't get into NPC houses anymore, which is strange. It feels like an unnecessary cut, and at this point, I'm beginning to sense a pattern that's hinting towards a team lacking in capability and being made to then rush.
That's a sin.
All of these HD N64 quality textures are more evidence of lazy development and cut corners. I really don't understand why Game Freak would release such an unfinished product.
That's a sin.
The terrestrialized forms look awful and garish. I get that they're meant to be like crown jewels, but I still don't like them. Mechanically, however, they do bring something somewhat new to the Pokemon formula.
That's a sin.
Evolution animations occur in the overworld, which is actually quite charming and good for keeping the player engaged with the world they're in.
Winning.
The dialogue is very,
How do you do, fellow kids?
and literally so for a very specific questline, which drags it on far, far too long.
That's a sin.
The plotline, made up of 3 main questlines and a finale, is very anime and isn't really very engaging until the end of the game. I've spent so long exploring the environment by this point, but it's finally time to start our gym challenge, beginning with Artisan Gym. The challenge exam is a very easy treasure hunt style mission where you have to find 10 Sunflora in town. This wasn't any kind of challenge at all, but I can appreciate the game trying to keep this classic gameplay loop fresh. Having Pokemon that are high levels not listen to commands unless a certain number of badges are gained is a tired and unnecessary mechanic that should have been cut generations ago. People should be allowed the option to grind out a max level EV trained super squad before taking on any of the game's major challenges if they choose to. I mean, I don't have anywhere near the level of commitment needed to make that choice, but it shouldn't be locked away from those who do. And let's be real, considering how easy most of the story battles play out anyway, stifling the player's efforts to train and use new teams during that time seems silly to me.
That's a sin.
Crafting TMs is an interesting addition that makes the usual grind have more uses than just leveling new Pokemon, but it also feels like something better replaced by simply being able to buy the TMs directly.
Winning.
This has been great ever since I started this playthrough, allowing the player to remember old Pokemon moves directly from a Pokemon status screen instead of having to find a specific NPC at a Pokemon Center really did wonders for maintaining my gameplay flow and allowing me to change and experiment with new and interesting squad strategies whenever I wanted.
Winning.
See? I told you. The badly disguised school director literally does a
How do you do, fellow kids?
That's a sin.
The first intro mission in the Operation Starfall questline is an obviously flawed plan. I immediately predict that the plot twist is going to be that Cassiopeia is the Eevee backpack kid and is using the main character to defeat all the leaders, then will battle the main character as a way to stop Team Star because they turned into what they hated, or some other similar nonsense. The power of friendship and the main character winning at battles will solve the problem for everyone. That's my bet.
That's a sin.
Pokemon varying in physical size in the overworld and during combat is another nice mechanic for immersion and bringing the world to life. And it was generally great to see Pokemon to scale, though I'm not sure how accurate that scale is.
Winning.
Wild Pokemon behave in a few different ways, for example, following the player or napping, but the lack of them interacting with each other seems unnatural and an obvious mechanic to implement.
That's a sin.
You can now see nearby wild Pokemon on the map and minimap. This is an excellent quality of life mechanic that is very helpful but doesn't make things too easy because it limits its radius around the player, so it's only displaying creatures that are within short walking distance.
Winning.
Bulk selling items is another good quality of life improvement that should have been implemented many games ago, and I'm so happy that I don't have to sell things one by one anymore.
Winning.
This is really disappointing, but just like with Pokemon abilities in combat, there's too much telling and not showing. For example, the combat text will describe an attack being dodged instead of an animation of the attack and the dodge. Animating those parts of combat will provide the player with a much more immersive and exciting experience, which truly would have shown how the game has evolved beyond its previous form. But they didn't, and it didn't, so this is what we get.
That's a sin.
I'll never get over how strange it is that fish Pokemon fly on land, but swimming and swimming land-based Pokemon get their own swimming-based animations, or a floating surface to stand on. The inconsistency here is so confusing and clearly another sign of unfinished development.
That's a sin.
The player marker on the map is only a dot instead of an arrow, which also shows the player's current facing direction. This seems like a stupid mistake to make when it's an industry standard for quality of life. And understanding your direction is just as important as location when using a map.
That's a sin.
The accurate-ish Pokemon sizes are not only great for immersion, but also help provide more depth to the traditional gameplay loops. For example, tiny Pokemon hiding in tall grass or trees are actually quite difficult to spot, while aggressive Pokemon patrols areas of their territory and will follow the player and attack them when they get too close.
Winning.
Not being forced into trainer battles in the overworld is something that should have existed a long time ago, and while I get that it's probably so the NPCs don't move from their spots, thus ruining the pre-planned battle environments, I think it's overall still a better approach to battling rivals in the wilds.
Winning.
I love being able to move the camera during combat. It's a really small and silly improvement, but I thought it was a great touch for my immersion.
Winning.
The basic design for Team Star is bland and generic, just like the rest of the art style, and while I get the classic biker look is meant to match the overall theme the game has with motorbike Pokemon, I still hated it. And somehow the boss designs look so overdone, it looks like they're trying to make up for their underlings' lack of style.
That's a sin.
The Team Star battles are a fun mini-game way to use auto battles, and a nice change of pace from the rest of the main story quests.
Winning.
Exposition cutscenes are very anime, very long, and very exposition-y, which, more than anything, left me bored, disinterested, and wanting to be anywhere else but there.
That's a sin.
Another really small thing that I really liked, wild Voltorbs use explosion on the overworld, so you actually have to sneak up on them or throw a Pokeball from range to engage them in battle.
Winning.
For some reason, aggressive wild Pokemon still try to charge you when you're in combat, to no effect. This is just lazy programming and it's distracting and annoying.
That's a sin.
Okay, as a fan, seeing Pokemon from a variety of regions in the wild, moving naturally on their own or in groups, especially basic stages being led by a higher evolution from their species, is the way I've always wanted to experience the games, especially Scyther, because Scyther is a boss.
Winning.
Shinies can actually be distinguished in the wild, which is really cool, but be careful, because they don't have any special effects or auras around them, so players will have to rely on their own knowledge of Pokemon color schemes to pick them out in a crowd.
Winning.
Revives and status cures should be part of Auto Heal too, and it's stupid not having them apply in the same way.
That's a sin.
Having Fly work as a standard fast travel mechanic is convenient, but miss the trick by having the player actually fly as the final travel upgrade.
That's a sin.
Seeing adults in school uniform is disturbing at best and creepy at worst.
Stop it. Get some help.
That's a sin.
Being able to traverse the map with such freedom is great, but it can get janky when trying to climb things or jump onto certain objects. It doesn't help that it's really easy to fall into glitch spots too.
That's a sin.
Overall, the game isn't very difficult, but you can get caught out of your depth if you go to certain areas underleveled. This is easy enough to avoid by moving around while Mon and keeping a good distance away, or appropriately leveling as you play through the game.
That's a sin.
Combat UI elements have a lot of useful information now, for example, move effectiveness, which is great for new players getting used to the game, as well as long-time players by easing some of the pressure of having to remember all of the many details involved in combat.
Winning.
As brilliant as an open world with Pokemon running around is, the game's content for the most part just isn't compelling anymore, and the gameplay loop feels like a stale chore.
That's a sin.
A landscape that looks like it was shaped randomly and without thought negate the purpose of the open world. Why bother exploring a game world that is so visually unappealing and was clearly made in a rush?
That's a sin.
Everything in the game has the feeling of something rushed, unpolished, and unfinished. Once the nostalgia wears off, the low-quality content fails to hold up or keep the player really engaged. I accidentally took a break from playing because the game is so unengaging that I genuinely forgot I was doing a playthrough for this review. And after having to take a short break from playing due to being busy in real life, coming back to the game again felt more like a chore than a joy.
That's a sin.
XP items and the XP share system is a great way of providing speedy leveling of Pokemon which, in my honest opinion, encourages the player to use more different Pokemon without having to waste time grinding to train up new teams.
Winning.
This generation's legendaries are locked behind a collectathon, where you have to pull out black stakes from the ground at very specific locations in the game world, then go to the location of the legendary seal, undo the seal, and finally go through the usual rigmarole of capturing them. Please stop wasting my time with Ubisoft-style, open-world bullshit that takes me away from the game I want to play, makes yet another aspect feel like a fucking chore.
That's a sin.
We finally get some better character development and a more cohesive plot now the end of the game is being approached in Area Zero. But this is lazy writing and should have been blended into the rest of the game from the onset. But the rest of the game relied on info dump flashbacks to tell the story instead.
That's a sin.
On the other hand, the plot has been more engaging, and I care about the side characters more than before because of those same conversations they have while we wander around this new zone.
Winning.
Somehow, Area Zero has the best crafted atmosphere and has been the most fun to explore. And while I really want to complain about how this should be too little too late, my enjoyment and engagement at this point has really increased.
Winning.
The plot got dark pretty fast, but it's actually compelling and enjoyable, even if fairly unoriginal.
Winning.
The battle against the AI professor was fun, but again, too easy with a level 60 team. While I'm not asking for a Souls-like challenge, I do expect more than what we're getting here.
That's a sin.
The Miraidon fight was a fun anime moment, but there was no challenge, and at this point the stakes are non-existent, so losing the battle won't happen unless I actually try to.
That's a sin.
There's a bittersweet tone to the main questline's ending, and it finally has some emotional impact.
Winning.
The postgame lets you re-battle the gym leaders for a much greater challenge, but at this point it feels like a too late addition intended to keep you playing the game, and I'm really not that hooked.
That's a sin.
Alright, it's time we sum up and summarize the results, but before I do, I just want to say that I really wanted to love this game. I went into it wanting it to be the best Pokemon game I've ever played, but instead I got something that was more like a metaphorical slap in the face than an enjoyable experience.
Wow.
I really wanted this to be my favorite Pokemon game of all time, but it wasn't. That makes me genuinely sad. But looking at the numbers, Pokémon Scarlet and Violet has 26 Charlie Sheens, 4 Immortan Joes, and 42 Sinning Nuns. Which leads us to some important questions to end the review on. So, should you buy this game? No, it's not worth the time or the money, and it's more of an insult to both dedicated fans and new players alike. Is this the best mainline Pokemon game in the franchise? No, but despite its laundry list of flaws, it is an evolution of the overall franchise formula and generally a positive step forward. But I think going forward, Game Freak need to stop with their yearly cycle of releases because it just hinders their ability to release a quality product that is worth the price tag. I don't think they will, because they'll keep making money hand over fist regardless of what they release, but I can always live in hope that they take more time, put in more effort, and give everyone the Pokemon game we all deserve.
See that sucker over there?
Thanks for watching until the end, and as always, take care of yourselves, my people.